Hi, I'm Robert Rizzo. Welcome to Forward and Out. Our guest on this episode is author Jenifer Levin, who is here to share her latest book with us, Love and Death and Other Disasters, a compilation of lesbian erotica. Welcome to the show, Jenifer.
It's great to be here,
Thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background as a writer?
Well, I've been writing since I was 5 years old, so
Okay.
I have a long background as a writer, and at the age of 40 now, that's, 35 years.
Been writing for a long time.
So I've been writing all my life, really.
Okay.
Yeah, since I could draw pictures and make little words
Fiction,
on pages, I have been
nonfiction?
writing short stories and novels. Yeah.
Would you consider your work fiction, nonfiction, autobiographical?
It's not autobiographical, it's fiction.
Okay.
And like any fiction, there are elements of one's personal life and experience, people that you know.
Okay. All right, so we're talking about lesbian erotica. Is there much being written out there by lesbian women in terms of erotica, in the field of erotica?
There's a lot being written in the field of erotica. I don't know how much of it is actually erotic. We can talk about that later.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit now. Define erotica. Might as well start there. What are we talking about?
Do we have to define? We were talking before, we had an interesting discussion about the difference between erotica and porn.
Okay.
And I think that we decided at that point that porn was clinical. And the point of pornography was to get as quickly as possible to the sex act itself, describe it in clinical detail, and then leave the reader turned on. That is the point of pornography.
Okay.
I'm not making a judgment on it. Sometimes that's good.
Right.
Sometimes it's bad writing. It doesn't matter. But that's what pornography is.
How is that different than erotica?
Erotica uses metaphor more. And we're talking about making love before. When you remember a wonderful experience making love, you don't say to your best friend that you're telling the tale to, he did this to me, and then she did that to me, and I did this, and you say it was like something.
Right.
It made me remember
Making a comparison.
something. It reminded me of. And that's bringing you immediately into the realm of literature.
Sure.
So,
and that's involving the reader and the imagination of the reader, I think, in...
well, it necessitates a sort of engagement on the part of the reader to be willing to use their own imagination and their own fantasy life when they're reading your story.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so there's some other women out there, Anais Nin and Marguerite Duras. So can you comment a little bit on their work? Were they influences or?
No. I mean, my influences are really very 19th century influences as a writer, because I'm primarily a novelist.
Okay.
And before publishing these stories, which have taken me about 20 years to write, by the way.
You started in 1977?
1977 was when I wrote the
For your
first
most
story.
recent book?
So in a way, I have published 4 novels in the interim in the mainstream press: Water Dancer, Snow, Shimone's Lover, and The Sea of Light as my most recent novel. So I am known as a mainstream novelist.
Right.
But I always wanted these short stories to be published by a lesbian press that would get them out to a lesbian audience. It's sort of really my gift to my own subcultural community. And I took a lot of time with them, and so they're an expression of really a different part of me as a writer. And it's been a journey of discovery for me, too.
Okay, wonderful. Which is an artist's dream, to be discovering oneself as an artist and as a person.
Isn't it? Although
Within
sometimes
the
you
work,
find
or
what
the
you
work.
don't want to know.
Oh, okay. That's a chance you take. I've been reading your book, and I sort of had my own sort of preconceived notions about what erotica is, even though I realize now that I've been reading it for years. Erotica is not just about sex, obviously. It involves a full range of emotions and experience. Can you just sort of illuminate a little bit on that point?
Well,
maybe some specifics from your latest book.
Well, erotica and good literature in general takes place in the context of a interesting story or situation. One of the stories here is about a woman who's just gotten out of the Israeli army, and she has
I love
an
that story.
affair with an older woman who's married and has a child. A lot of the characters in these stories.
It's in Paris, right?
She goes to Paris later, yeah, but it starts in Israel.
Okay.
And then she winds up in Paris. In another story.
A romantic setting.
Yes. Yes, there are stories that take place, with erotica in the context of a visit home to one's family with your lover.
Right.
There's erotica in the hospital bed of someone dying of cancer. These are all
Right.
situations that interest me, and it's why I realized after working on these stories for almost 20 years that indeed they were really about Freud's famous couplet, love and death, and that in a lot of ways death is not a tragedy and love is not always a triumph. They both have elements of joy in them and of discovery, and they both have really serious elements of disaster in them.
Can one exist without the other?
I don't know. I don't know. I know life doesn't exist without death, and we're all on the journey there. And I don't know if love exists without death, or without at least the consciousness of the temporary nature of life and relationships. So there's a sort of underlying sorrow in life, as well as a tremendous underlying joy and a desire to just live as fully as possible.
Right.
Get out there, have as many experiences as you can, but in a way that's tempered by the knowledge that it's going to end.
Right. And maybe that makes the moments when we're alive more precious.
I think it's what makes our moments of love alive, and why we remember certain lovers over certain others, or why a reader would remember a certain character in a book, because it touches something inside of them.
Love and Death and Other Disasters is the title of the book.
That's the title of the book.
Provocative, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you explained that very well. Does your book answer the big question, what do lesbians do?
It answers the question what some lesbians do.
Okay.
I sort of hope that at least as an urban culture in America, maybe we're over asking the question, what do lesbians do in bed? I mean, do we lie side by side and manipulate each other physically? Do we use dildos and strap-ons and all that stuff? Birth control, I mean, whatever.
Why not?
Why not? Why not? I think it's a lot more obvious in the general culture what gay men do in bed.
Why is that?
It feels a lot more transgressive. I think because American culture has really spent so much energy sort of suppressing and hiding the more ambivalent side of it, the more feminine side of it. That now as we go into the 90s, we're sort of on the verge of a whole new century, and I still see that element of strident maleness in American society that makes me feel we're protesting too much.
And we're seeing now strident feminineness as well out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to offend a lot of people here, but I don't.
Go right ahead.
I did not like feminism at all, and I still don't. I agree with its goals, but I think that the feminist movement has made a lot of mistakes and has alienated a lot of people, including people like me who believe in its goals. So.
Okay. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about specifically some of the stories. You were talking about the last story, which really is a very poignant depiction of two ex-lovers who come together when one is stricken with cancer and dying. They had children together and separated. One gave up the child, and the other one sort of went on with her life. And maybe she was having some moments of regret there in the end. Can you tell a little bit about it? Where did you get your idea for this story?
Oh, gee, from life. And really, I would say that it's not a woman who inspired my initial fantasy of the story. It was, having a lot of gay male friends who've died of AIDS over the years, and I've lost most of my friends, most of the people that were my buddies that I hung out with, who, comforted me in my periods of broken heart as a youth, and who I went dancing with and drank with and did all those fun things with in the 70s. They're almost all dead with the exception of one. And so there's been a tremendous amount of loss.
Did that prompt you to begin writing that story?
Yeah.
Specifically? Okay.
Yes, it did. And the story took several years to write as I got a little more removed from the experience of losing my last good friend who died. I found that I was able to write more about death in an artistic way, because when you're very close to an experience, it's often not the time to try and express it artistically. You need a little distance so that you can do it well.
Okay. Do you have any particular favorites, stories that you like better than others, or that speak more to you as a lesbian woman?
Oh, gee.
You really cover such an array of topics.
Yeah.
From war to love to lust.
Love and death and war and lust.
It's amazing.
Yes. Well, you know, I love them all.
Yeah.
They're carefully picked.
Any specific characters that speak to you?
La Bruja.
La Bruja. I didn't get to that story.
Yes.
Tell us about
Oh,
it.
for shame.
I'm sorry. I read most of them. Which story was La Bruja?
La Bruja is about an ex-prostitute, also who's facing death from various diseases, and about the young butch lover who has always fantasized about being with her and never has,
Okay.
and comes to rescue her for a single day as she's on her deathbed. I think that that's probably my favorite story. And
Why specifically?
oh, it's romantic, I guess, and I'm a romanticist at heart. I think you have to have a certain amount of sentimentality to be a writer or any kind of artist. You know, otherwise you're not going to bother to want to express yourself and evoke any feelings in other people.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. It's an act of love, really.
Okay. Is there any one character that's specifically your voice?
Yes
I
and
know
no.
it's, yeah.
I mean, that's a
It's sort of
it's a funny question.
Yes, it is. It
you
certainly
know.
is. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's a very personal question to ask.
Well, listen, you're a performer. I know you are. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you're inhabiting a character or when you're portraying a character, do you work from the outside in or do you work from the inside out?
A little bit of both, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah. And
Do you find that the character represents you?
not always. Certainly, I
Uh-huh.
can't relate to every experience that character is going through. So I have to use my imagination.
Yes.
And I have to fill out the pieces that I don't know. That's my job as a performer, is to, and how I know that or where I get that from is my muse. That comes from my imagination.
Yes. Often people ask me, did you experience everything that you've written about? You know, have you been in a plane
Such
crash?
a pressure.
Have you been in a plane crash?
How can you
have
write
you lost
about
a
it?
lover to cancer?
But that's the question.
You know.
They want to know, how can you write so convincingly?
Well, I tell them that's my
It's
job.
really an inverted
Yeah,
compliment.
No, it's my job. It's my job as a writer to inhabit the consciousness of others and to channel voices, really.
Okay. And how does a writer, an artist, do that? Is there something that you can do sort of mechanically to get into that
Oh, hell,
mindset?
Robert, no.
Just sort of happens.
I think
it an
that
intuitive
time
sense?
alone is very valuable. Time alone is very valuable, and I think that's why writers spend a tremendous amount of time alone.
We were
you
talking
know,
about this
we can
earlier,
almost be recluses at times. Even the writers I know who love other people and love partying need to spend a lot of time alone, just removed from the world, yet in it,
Okay.
thinking about things that have happened between people. And it's sort of a conundrum. I mean, here you are writing about all these
Conundrum?
fascinating things. Yes, it's ironic.
Okay.
It's ironic in a way. You're writing about all these things that happen between people, and yet you're spending so much of your time alone without people in front of your computer screen or a typewriter or whatever. And it's interesting. It can get very lonely. But there's nothing like there's nothing as exciting to me as, say, you know, plowing through the writing of a whole novel, which can sometimes take a decade.
Wow.
And
In this case, it's 1977 to the present, right?
well, some
Love-
of these stories actually took
Love and
longer
Death
to
and
write
Other
than
Disasters,
novels.
yeah.
But I wrote them sporadically.
Okay.
These were things that I wrote as I matured, and I would begin the stories. I'd write them one way. Then over the years, I would go back to them. I'd revise them. I'd add.
Okay.
So they're the product of about 20 years' work, but not the sort of concentrated, say, 8 years' work that my last novel, The Sea of Light, took. That was
Okay.
8 years' labor.
Sea of Light.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that novel.
That's the story of a champion swimmer,
Okay.
Babe Delgado, who loses her physical ability and all of her team, the Pan American swimming team, in a terrible plane crash. And it's really how she rehabilitates herself to life the first year after, and comes to an understanding of her sexuality. I always say it's a novel about a hurricane named Angelita that changes the lives of 4 different people,
Wow.
all lesbians, whose lives intertwine. It's about the year following the wake of this hurricane.
Mm.
And it involves swimming because I was a competitive swimmer and I know something
you
about
were?
that. Yes. I've got 2 novels that involve swimming in some way, shape, or form, but they're not about swimming.
Okay, tell us about the other one. Sea
Water
of Love.
Dancer was my first.
Water Dancer.
Yeah. Water Dancer was
That
my
was
first
your first,
novel.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. That was about a marathon swimmer who trained for a year to cross a very difficult channel of water that had never been crossed before.
No, that sounds like a metaphor.
Mm. Someone said it's
What
a great
channel are we
metaphor for
crossing?
writing a novel.
Okay.
You know,
And
I
for
don't
life,
know.
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I,
Does she make it across? We're
You
going to
want
read
me
the
to
book.
tell?
We're going to read the book. Okay. And tell us about Snow. That was your 3rd novel, right?
Snow was my 2nd novel.
Okay. So we're messing up the order a little bit.
It's all right. Water Dancer came first, then Snow was my 2nd novel. It was about the devastation of a tropical island
Okay.
in wartime, an island devastated by civil war and by a chemical defoliant agent, and what happened to the life of the people there, and some people who come from outside with various intentions, some evil, some good.
Okay. You write a lot about war, I notice, in your
Yes.
present novel, and now I'm hearing about it in Snow. Is that an intentional choice, or is
Well, it's
that...
the human condition, isn't it?
In what way? I'm not going to agree with you. I'm not going to make it easy.
Well,
I agree.
I mean, in the obvious sense that there are wars going on globally all the time, and also in the obvious metaphorical
Internally.
sense that we're always fighting to have more than we have, be more than we are.
As lesbian and gay people.
You know, as lesbian and gay
period.
people, to have rights and whatnot. And then also in the sense that I think that war is inevitable in art.
Hmm.
You know, Yeats once said, when someone asked him, what makes drama? He said, swords and strife.
It really does.
And it does. If you have a fight and you have a disagreement or an argument or a battle going on, you have a story.
I loved Errol Flynn.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Douglas
So,
Fairbanks Jr.
so in a way, every novel is a war. And every short story has a mini war, is a battle, a skirmish in a larger war. Hopefully, a short story book ties together thematically, but they're all little tiny battles in a larger war. And the novel itself is a big war.
And how does the war in Snow change the characters? What realizations? Maybe 1 or 2.
No, I can't speak for them.
Okay.
You know, my characters are sort of sacred to me. I think in the same way
I
that
sense that, yeah.
paintings become sacred to an artist, or I think certain characters become sacred to different actors. You have to have them
I sense that you're very protective of your characters.
to an extent, but then, you know, you let them go.
They sort of have to speak for themselves, huh?
Yes.
Okay. I can't wait to read that one, Snow. All right, and the one after that was
Was Shimoni's Lover.
Shimoni's Lover, which you told us about.
Yeah.
And then
No,
the one
Shimoni's
after
Lover
that?
takes place in Israel.
Okay.
After the Yom Kippur War. It's about a family with several sons, one of whom is a gay man. And they've lost one of their sons during the Yom Kippur War, and it's about how they reconcile themselves to each other,
Okay.
or fail to reconcile themselves to each other in the wake of that war, living in a small community, which they do.
Okay, I can
So-
certainly relate to that
Yeah.
that story. And then, which brings us to the 4th novel, correct?
The Sea of Light.
Sea of Light.
Yes,
Ooh, I
which
love
I
that
already
title.
told you about.
Okay.
Yes.
All
That's
right.
the one about the swimmer who goes down in the air crash, and the year of her life after that.
Mm.
And then, of course, while I was writing these books, I was writing the stories that are now in Love and Death and Other Disasters.
Love that title. I really love that title. How much does the title of a work, where do you get your ideas for your titles? Do they just sort of speak to you in the way that the characters do, or it seems like an obvious question, but I'm always intrigued with where the titles come from.
I think in a way when you have the title, you have the book.
Okay.
And so often a title comes to me first.
Mm.
And I don't know why that is.
Right.
You know, I remember an actress saying to me once that she was trying to get to the heart of a character and couldn't do it. And then one day she was walking on 14th Street in Manhattan, and she looked through the window of a shoe store, and she saw a pair of pink plastic shoes. And she knew,
Okay.
when she saw those shoes, what her character
Fabulous.
was and how to get into the character. And I think there's sort of that weird alchemical way that titles come to you too.
Always for you, the title comes
Yeah,
first.
once I have the title, I pretty much have the story.
Okay. Sort of a loaded question. Do your characters, in your opinion, paint a realistic portrait of lesbians? Thinking in terms of how the general public is going to perceive lesbians.
Well, one thing I did with this collection, which is a little different from what I've done with my other novels, because all of my previous work has been published in mainstream presses. And in fact, several mainstream houses had asked me specifically to see this collection of short stories. But there was never a doubt in my mind that I was writing it for a lesbian audience.
Okay.
So in a way, what I did was to take away the consideration of how a heterosexual audience is going to respond to this book
You
at all.
freed yourself up creatively, completely.
I felt free in my other novels creatively, but speaking only to my lesbian audience,
Okay.
I wanted to say different things. So I care about how lesbians perceive the lesbian sexuality in this a lot more than I care about how anyone else does.
Okay.
And that makes my concerns a little more pointed.
What did you want to say in this collection of short stories that was additional or different from your novels? What do you want to say to your lesbian sisters?
That there are ways of getting what we need and what we want out of life that we least expect to find. That we find love in peculiar places. That love comes in very bizarre packages.
Comes from some of the most unexpected places, too.
Extremely unexpected, and that if you can open up the little part of yourself inside that says yes, and saying yes to a fulfilling erotic and sexual experience is part of that, but it's not all of that, but it is part of that,
Okay.
you know. The rewards are tremendous.
Yeah. It's, you know, as I was reading your present collection, Love and Death and Other Disasters, I mean, as a gay male, as a male, but more so as a human being, I was struck by the depth and the range of the emotional experience of the characters, and I could really relate to it. And for me, yes, it's lesbian erotica, but it's human erotica. And I think that everyone can really read this and get something out of it. Do you find that people will tell you, gay men, straight women, as well as lesbians responding?
Well, I haven't had a lot of response to this collection yet because it's coming out next week.
Right, but some of your previous work.
In my previous one, I would say about 50% of my audience is heterosexual people.
Fantastic.
And when I do readings, about half of the audience are, you know, they're straight men who come up to me with all of my books, and they want me to sign them, and they bring their kids along. So, you know, there's no question in my mind as to, you know, if someone is an artist or they're a writer and they're also a lesbian or a gay man, there's no question in my mind that, yeah, of course, primarily we are first artists. Okay. But I think that living as gay people really affects our perspective on the world.
How?
And I think that, well, okay, I think that gay people have to, because survival reasons, need to have a certain sensitivity to human dynamics, always. You must see a little more than the average heterosexual person in order to survive in a lot of social situations. So you always have your antenna up.
Okay.
You always live with a sort of a hyper-consciousness and an in-depth understanding of what's going on between people and between you and other people in any given situation
Sort of
at any
being on
moment.
guard, or
No, it's a hyper-consciousness.
It's like a radar
not
out, a
necessarily-
feeler out?
Yes, it is, and artists have that too.
certainly.
And I think that's why so many lesbians and gays create. I think that there's a deep connection between sexual difference
intimate
and
connection.
otherness and the ability to create. They require the same tools sometimes for survival, for success.
Okay. And very interesting. You mentioned earlier that that the publishing house wanted to look at your stories. How is it in general getting gay and lesbian work published? How are the houses, the publishing houses? I
The
know you're working with
mainstream
Firebrand now.
For this book, I'm working with Firebrand, and my other books have been published by Simon & Schuster, Harcourt,
Okay.
Brace, Jovanovic, Dutton, Plume. I think it depends on what kind of audience we want to reach. And my novels are having to tackle very big, broad themes that have a lot of resonance for human beings in general and a literary audience, whether it be gay, straight, whatever. I chose the venue of the small press for the short stories because my passionate concern as a person, as a writer at this point in my life, is to really reach and touch a lesbian audience and give something back to this community that I feel has really loved me over the years and held me in its arms collectively, and
Okay.
I just wanted to do that.
Wonderful. Where can people get your book that's coming out, Love and Death and Other Disasters? Where will it be available?
Well, of course, you want to go to the independent bookstores first,
Okay, independent bookstores first.
gay and lesbian bookstores as well, and given the fact that my other books are in Barnes & Noble and all the big bookstores as well, there will probably be some. If you don't find them in fiction, look for them in the gay and lesbian fiction section.
Okay. Just very briefly, what inspires you to write? Very briefly.
I guess it's a desire to express what speaks to me in the deepest part of myself. I think it's a desire to channel, as we say, stories that seem to come to me from the universe,
Okay.
and I feel a responsibility to tell them. And I think also because I can't stop myself. I just, if I could do something else that was easier,
You just can't, you have to
I
write.
I would, because writing is not fun a lot of the time.
Okay.
But
Well, thank you. We're going to look for that book. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you.
Good luck
My
to you and all
pleasure,
that you
Robert.
do.
Okay.
Love and Death and Other Disasters, a book of lesbian erotica. Get out there and get it and enjoy. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be proud.